Hi, my name is Kylie Christensen, and I did my third Who's the Fairest of Them All on a willingness to listen measure. So in addition to the measure, I used the paper called May I Have Your Attention, Exordial Techniques in Informative Oral Presentations. So first, a little bit about the measure. 59 and below showed low levels of willingness to listen. 59 to 89 was moderate, and 89 was high levels. So that basically means you are unwilling to listen to the speaker. So the paper I found helped a lot with explaining this scale, because the scale basically talks about how willing you are to listen to a boring speaker or someone that doesn't really try to adapt to you. And the paper that I used in addition to it used 3 different techniques. They basically wanted to find out which was going to have the highest levels of comprehension and engagement in the audience. So the 3 different techniques for the opener of the speech was anecdotes, which is a short imaginative story, and not necessarily focusing on the speaker, just focusing on something that they think would keep the audience engaged. The second was ethical appeal, which is the speaker explaining their credibilities and qualifications to give the speech, not really focusing on the audience, just kind of saying, this is what qualifies me to give the speech, and then going into it. And the third was a your problem approach. So the speaker introduced the subject in a way that it seemed as if it was going to be kind of an imminent thing that the audience would be facing, and this is how you solve this problem. So I found that interesting because the findings of the study saw significant benefits in using an anecdote or a your problem statement, whereas ethical appeal had a much lower level of comprehension and overall engagement throughout the speech, which I don't think is surprising, but it was such lower levels, and I feel like most of us try to say that we want to listen, try to say that we are going to be engaged throughout it, but when we have things going on in our life and other things to focus on, we don't really want to focus on a dry speech that doesn't pertain to us. In Chapter 6 of our book, Listening and Feedback, the other half of communication, one of the lines that I thought really helped with this subject was, listening is like a physical exercise. Everyone knows it's important, but many find it difficult to do on a regular basis. So I think that this really helps explain this because it is like an exercise. Not all of us want to do it. We say we're going to, we have good intentions to, but oftentimes when we're listening to someone, we tend to focus on what we're going to say in response, or if what they're saying doesn't pertain to us or we don't think it's interesting, we tend to focus on what we have to do that day and tasks that we have to focus on instead of what the person is saying. And so using this in addition with the study, it makes sense because the things that people tended to focus on and the 2 that people had higher levels of comprehension in were the things that they could generally relate to their own lives. So using an anecdote, something that they could imagine and really focus on and have to pay attention to understand all the details. And using a your problem statement, something that is going to impact you moving forward in the near future. Whereas the ethical approach mainly focused on the speaker and why it was important to them and why they're qualified to give it. So overall, I got an 83, which I see as understandable because a lot of the questions were focusing on listening to a boring speaker about boring content makes me tired, sleepy, or bored. And so your brain kind of shuts off as you listen to things that are a little bit more boring to you, which I personally relate to. So overall, I think the number that I got makes sense, and I think it makes sense because we're not selfish, but we're self-interested. So we focus on things that are going to help us and benefit us. So I think a willingness to listen is really just dependent on what the information is.